Picture yourself in the heart of Targovis Palace, Wallachia, on a frigid November morning in 1448. The air is thick, almost suffocating, with the stench of blood and burning flesh, a grotesque perfume that claws at your throat and turns your stomach. Screams slice through the silence, rising and falling like the wails of the damned, each cry a jagged edge in the morning chill. In the central courtyard, beneath a sky heavy with winter clouds, a forest of wooden stakes stretches before you, each one crowned with a writhing human form, Ottoman prisoners, their bodies twisting in agony, their voices weaving a demonic symphony that echoes off the stone walls. And there, standing motionless as a statue, is a young man, barely 17, his eyes cold as river stones, watching his handiwork with an expression carved from marble and indifference. This is Vlad Dracula, a name that will soon become a whisper of terror across Europe. How does a boy, just 11 years old when his nightmare began, become this? How does a child prince transform into a monster who impales thousands, whose very name conjures images of blood-soaked stakes and unrelenting cruelty? Welcome to Grim Chronicles, where we peel back the layers of history's darkest tales. And today, we're stepping into the crucible of horror that forged Vlad Dracula. A story of captivity, betrayal, and a soul reshaped by 6 years of unspeakable suffering. Let's wind the clock back 7 years, to a time when Vlad was not yet the impaler, not yet a legend, but a boy caught in a world of golden possibilities and crushing expectations. Born in the bitter winter of 1431 in the fortress town of Sigosora, nestled in the rugged heart of Transylvania, Vlad entered life as the second son of Vlad Dracula, a name that meant dragon in the chivalric order of the dragon, though his enemies hissed its darker translation, devil. Wallachia, his father's principality, was a land balanced on a knife's edge, caught between two ravenous empires. To the south sprawled the Ottoman Empire, its armies swelling with each conquest, hungry for Christian lands and souls. To the north loomed the Kingdom of Hungary, its demands for loyalty and tribute no less fierce. Wallachia was a tightrope stretched over an abyss, and its voivodes, its princes, learned to dance with precision or plunge to their doom. Young Vlad grew up in castles that hummed with the weight of this reality, where prayer and politics intertwined like ivy on ancient stone. His mornings began with Orthodox matins, the air thick with incense as priests chanted in Old Church Slavonic, their voices carrying the weight of Byzantine tradition. But by noon, those same halls filled with the sharp cadence of diplomatic negotiations, as envoys from Budapest and Constantinople arrived with demands that could never be fully satisfied. Imagine Vlad as a boy, no older than 10, watching his father navigate this treacherous dance. Vlad, too, was a man of many masks. Father, ruler, diplomat, his face shifting from paternal warmth to calculated neutrality in the blink of an eye. Vlad absorbed these lessons without realizing it, his sharp eyes catching every detail. How survival demanded constant adaptation, how truth was a luxury princes could rarely afford, how today's ally could become tomorrow's executioner. These were brutal lessons for a child. But in Wallachia, where the average voivode's reign lasted less than 5 years before ending in exile, assassination, or conquest, they were essential. Vlad's younger brother, Radu, born 3 years later, was his mirror opposite. Where Vlad was intense, brooding, his dark eyes always searching for hidden threats, Radu was a burst of light, his quick smile and musical laugh charming everyone around him. Vlad pored over military treatises with grim determination, while Radu lost himself in poetry and courtly entertainments. The brothers loved each other fiercely, but even as children, their differences were stark, differences that would prove tragically prophetic in the years to come. Wallachia's precarious existence grew more unstable with each passing year. By 1436, when Vlad was 5, his father finally secured the throne through Hungarian support. But the crown came with impossible conditions. The Hungarians demanded unwavering loyalty against the Ottomans, while the Ottomans threatened annihilation if Wallachia remained hostile. Vlad too performed a desperate diplomatic ballet, promising fealty to both sides while hoping to pit them against each other. The royal household lived in a state of constant tension. Meals interrupted by urgent messengers bearing news of Ottoman troop movements, castle guards changing uniforms based on which envoys were visiting. Even the boys' education reflected this paranoia. They learned Hungarian, Latin, and Turkish with equal fluency, studied both Catholic and Orthodox theology, and practiced diplomatic phrases that could appease Christian and Muslim masters alike. Picture Vlad, not yet 11, reciting Turkish greetings with a precision that belied his age, his small hands gripping a quill as he copied Latin texts, all while the shadow of war loomed larger each day. As Vlad approached his 11th birthday, the pressure on his father became unbearable. The Hungarian king, Vladislaus III, grew suspicious of Walachia's neutrality, while Sultan Murad II, the Ottoman ruler who had conquered vast swaths of the Balkans, demanded concrete proof of submission. The delicate balance that had preserved Walachia's independence was crumbling, and Vlad too knew he had to act to save his throne and his family. The opportunity came in the form of an invitation from the Ottomans, one that seemed too generous to refuse. Sultan Murad II, a warrior emperor whose armies stretched from the Danube to the Euphrates, expressed a desire for a personal meeting to discuss a treaty that would guarantee Walachia's autonomy while satisfying Ottoman interests. The location was Edirne, just across the Danube in Ottoman territory, close enough to reach quickly, prestigious enough to signal respect. For Vlad too, this was a lifeline, a chance to secure his son's inheritance and ease Hungarian pressure. He prepared for the journey with a hope he hadn't felt in years, unaware that he was walking into a trap that would change his family forever. In the autumn of 1442, as golden leaves fell like scattered coins across Walachia's highways, Vlad too assembled his delegation. He brought his most trusted advisors, a small military escort, and, in a gesture meant to demonstrate good faith, his two young sons, 11-year-old Vlad and 8-year-old Radu. The decision to bring the boys was both a diplomatic move and a father's hope to secure their future. As their carriage rolled south toward the Danube, Vlad pressed his face against the window, watching familiar forests give way to foreign landscapes. He couldn't know that he was crossing more than a river. He was crossing the threshold between childhood and a nightmare that would reshape his soul. The trap closed with the soft whisper of silk curtains. What began as a diplomatic reception in Edirne transformed within hours into captivity. Ottoman guards politely escorted Vlad too to separate quarters, while his sons were led to more suitable accommodations for young princes. The boys would not see their father again for 6 years, their world shrinking to the gilded walls of Topkapi Palace in Constantinople, a place where innocence was a liability and survival demanded a terrible price. The marble halls of Topkapi Palace gleam under torchlight, but their beauty hides a sinister purpose, a place where silk and cruelty intertwine to break the spirits of the young. You're with grim chronicles, and we're stepping deeper into the nightmare that enveloped 11-year-old Vlad Dracula and his brother Radu, now captives in a world designed to erase their past and forge them into tools of the Ottoman Empire. The palace school, where they were sent, was no ordinary place of learning. It was a crucible, a machine of psychological warfare disguised as privilege, where every lesson was a test of submission or defiance. For Vlad, with his fierce orthodox pride, it was a battleground where his soul would be tested, reshaped, and hardened into something the world would come to fear. From the moment they arrived, the palace was a shock to Vlad's senses. The air was heavy with exotic spices, the corridors alive with the murmur of Turkish and the clink of gold. Silk robes replaced his rough Wallachian tunics, and vast libraries promised knowledge beyond his wildest dreams. But beneath this veneer of luxury lay a calculated system designed to dismantle Christian identities and forge loyal Ottoman servants. Vlad's defiance was immediate and unmistakable. When ordered to prostrate toward Mecca, he stood rigid, his small frame trembling with resolve. When instructed to recite Quranic verses, his lips remained sealed, his eyes burning with unspoken fury. The officials, masters of manipulation, marked him as a problem, a stubborn ember that refused to be extinguished. They didn't want to kill him. A dead prince was useless, but to reshape him, to mold him into a tool who would carry Ottoman interests back to Wallachia. But Vlad was no ordinary captive. His mind, sharp as a blade, began to turn their lessons against them, absorbing the mechanics of power with a precision that would one day terrify the world. Imagine Vlad's daily life in those early months, a rhythm of ritual and punishment. Each dawn began with the call to prayer, a sound that grated against his orthodox soul. He was expected to join the other boys, sons of conquered nobility from across the Balkans, in rituals that honored a faith he rejected. When he refused to bow, the consequences were swift but subtle at first. Extra duties were piled on, scrubbing marble floors while others studied, or serving wine at banquets where Ottoman nobles mocked his heritage. "Look at the little Christian prince," they'd sneer, their laughter echoing as Vlad poured from heavy silver jugs, his hands trembling with suppressed rage. These humiliations were designed to chip away at his pride, to teach him that resistance was futile. But Vlad was watching, always watching. He noted the nobles' names, their faces, the way they wielded power through shame. He memorized the hierarchy of the court, the way officials used fear to control, the way a single word could send a servant scrambling or a captive trembling. As the first year bled into the second, the abuse grew darker, more deliberate. The Ottomans understood that physical pain alone wouldn't break a spirit like Vlad's. They turned to psychological warfare, isolating him from the other boys. Friends he'd made in those early months, other defiant souls who whispered of escape in the dark, began to vanish. Some were transferred to distant parts of the empire. Others fell ill under mysterious circumstances. Vlad learned quickly that the palace was a prison of constant surveillance, where every gesture was noted, every word reported. He began to speak less, his eyes growing hollow as he retreated into himself. But this wasn't surrender, it was adaptation. He was learning to play their game, to wear a mask of compliance while his mind worked like a steel trap, cataloging every detail of his tormentor's methods. The sexual exploitation woven into the palace's hierarchy was perhaps the most insidious tool in the Ottoman arsenal. It wasn't random cruelty but a calculated strategy to dominate and humiliate. Young captives, especially those as striking as Vlad with his sharp features and intense gaze, were vulnerable to the whims of older officials. It began with small violations. Hands lingering too long during lessons, forced communal bathing where privacy was non-existent, sleeping arrangements that left boys exposed to those who held power over them. For Vlad, these moments were an assault on more than his body. They were an attack on his identity, his pride as a prince of Wallachia. Each incident was designed to reinforce his powerlessness, to reduce him to an object in the eyes of his captors. The officials knew exactly what they were doing. By dominating a prince in this way, they demonstrated the empire's absolute control, creating trauma that would either break a captive or bind them to the system through shame. Vlad's response was extraordinary, not because he escaped the abuse, no one could, but because of how he processed it. Where others crumbled, losing themselves in despair or conversion, Vlad began to dissociate. During the worst moments, when officials forced themselves upon him, he retreated into a mental fortress, observing his suffering as if it were happening to someone else. He cataloged their techniques with clinical precision. The way they used shame to shatter resistance, the way pain could be prolonged for maximum effect, the way fear of punishment controlled behavior more effectively than punishment itself. This dissociation was a survival mechanism, but it was also the birth of something darker. Vlad was becoming a student of sadism, not out of desire but out of necessity. If the Ottomans wanted to teach him the language of power, he would learn it fluently, memorizing every syllable of cruelty. His brother Radu, meanwhile, was the palace's golden child. At 8 years old when they arrived, his natural charm and adaptability made him a favorite among the officials. He learned Turkish with a speed that astonished his teachers, recited Islamic prayers with genuine enthusiasm, and navigated the court's politics with a skill that belied his age. By the end of their second year, Radu was attending state functions as an honored guest, dressed in Ottoman silks, his laughter ringing through the halls. For Vlad, this was a betrayal deeper than any physical pain. He watched his beloved brother transform into someone he barely recognized, speaking of his Ottoman family with affection, praying toward Mecca with devotion. The officials orchestrated this divergence deliberately, using Radu's success to deepen Vlad's isolation. At banquets, Radu sat at high tables with pashas, while Vlad poured wine in silence. During ceremonies, Radu led prayers, while Vlad stood in the shadows, his face a mask of stone. Each contrast was a knife to Vlad's heart, a reminder that his resistance came at a cost his brother was unwilling to pay. By the third year, Vlad's defiance had become a dangerous game. The officials escalated their punishments, moving from humiliation to physical abuse. Beatings became routine, delivered with a cold efficiency that left no room for anger or mercy. Vlad was summoned to private chambers with increasing frequency, where he endured violations that would have driven weaker minds to madness. Yet he refused to break. Instead, he studied his tormentors with a scholarly intensity, noting how they used pain to control, how they manipulated loyalty through fear. He began to ask questions, seemingly innocent inquiries about Ottoman military tactics, administrative structures, the names of provincial governors. The officials, pleased by his apparent curiosity, saw this as a sign of progress. They were wrong. Vlad was conducting reconnaissance, gathering intelligence for a future he was beginning to imagine, a future where he would turn their lessons against them. The air in Topkapi Palace grows heavier now, the weight of years pressing down on a young Vlad Dracula, whose defiance is being forged into something colder, sharper, more dangerous. You're tuned into grim chronicles, and we're walking through the darkest years of Vlad's captivity, a crucible where the line between victim and monster blurs. By his fourth year, Vlad is 13, a ghost of the boy who crossed the Danube with his father, his once bright eyes hollow, his frame thin from the strain of constant vigilance. The palace school has become a relentless machine, grinding down resistance with surgical precision, and Vlad is its most stubborn subject, a prince whose spirit refuses to break but is being reshaped in ways his captors can't foresee. The Ottoman officials have categorized Vlad as a problem case, a Christian prince whose defiance requires special attention. They've doubled down on their efforts, blending physical abuse with psychological torment to wear him down. Beatings are no longer occasional but a regular part of his routine, delivered with a cold efficiency that leaves no room for mercy. Vlad is summoned to private chambers almost nightly, where the violations he endures are not just physical but a calculated assault on his identity. The Ottomans know that to break a prince, you must strip him of his pride, his faith, his sense of self. They want him to see himself as nothing, a tool of the empire, a servant who exists only to obey. But Vlad's mind is his fortress, a place where his captors can't follow. During the worst moments, when the pain and shame threaten to overwhelm him, he retreats into a mental sanctuary, observing his suffering with a detachment that's both protective and terrifying. He begins to see his tormentors not as men but as case studies, their actions a textbook on power and control. He notes how they use silence to intimidate, how a single glance can convey a threat more effectively than a whip. He memorizes the way they orchestrate fear, staging public punishments to cow the other captives. The turning point comes in his fourth year, during a spectacle that will haunt him forever. A young Serbian prince, who had resisted conversion for 3 years, is brought to the palace courtyard for a public punishment. This isn't a simple execution but a display of torture, designed to break the spirit of every Christian captive watching. The boy is impaled on a wooden stake, positioned not for a quick death but for slow, agonizing suffering that lasts hours. His screams echo through the corridors, a warning to all who defy the empire. The officials force Vlad and the other captives to watch, explaining that this is the fate of those who resist. For most, the spectacle works, renewing their determination to embrace Islam. For Vlad, it's a revelation. He studies the crowd's reactions with a detachment that borders on scientific, noting how the threat of extreme suffering controls behavior more effectively than rewards. He observes how the anticipation of pain is often more powerful than the pain itself. That night, alone in his chamber, Vlad experiences a shift in his psyche. He understands the true nature of power. It isn't strength or wealth or divine mandate, but the willingness to inflict suffering and the knowledge that others fear that willingness. This realization liberates him from the last of his moral constraints. If power is about cruelty, he will master it. If the Ottomans rule through fear, he will become fear incarnate. His behavior changes subtly. He stops openly defying his captors, adopting a mask of compliance that fools even the sharpest observers. He participates in the palace routines, attending lessons with a mechanical obedience that pleases his handlers. He answers questions in Turkish, his accent growing smoother with each passing month. He even bows during prayers, though his lips never move to form the words. The officials see this as a victory, a sign that their methods are finally working. They praise his improvement, pointing to the former Wallachian prince as a success story. They dress him in Ottoman silks for state occasions, where he stands beside Turkish nobility, his face blank but his eyes always watching, a living trophy of their supposed triumph. Radu, meanwhile, is the embodiment of the palace's success. By his early teens, he has become everything the Ottomans want. A perfect convert, fluent in Turkish, devout in his adopted faith, and skilled in the art of courtly diplomacy. He moves through the palace like a favored son, his laughter a stark contrast to Vlad's silence. The officials groom him for a future in administration, seeing his intelligence and charm as assets for the empire's expansion. Radu's success is a constant wound to Vlad, a reminder of the path he refuses to take. The brothers still share moments of connection, quiet conversations in the dark, memories of Walachia's forests, but these are fleeting. Radu's loyalty to the Ottomans is now absolute, and Vlad can feel the distance growing between them, a chasm widened by every banquet where Radu sits with the powerful while Vlad serves in silence. The psychological warfare between the brothers is a masterpiece of Ottoman manipulation. The officials orchestrate moments to highlight Radu's success and Vlad's degradation, hoping to push Vlad toward surrender. During one state dinner, Radu is seated beside a provincial governor, laughing and discussing policy, while Vlad pours wine, his face a mask of neutrality. During a religious ceremony, Radu leads a prayer, his voice clear and confident, while Vlad stands in the shadows, his hands clenched into fists. These moments are designed to break Vlad's spirit, to show him that resistance is pointless, that submission is the only path to power. But instead of breaking, Vlad grows colder, his hatred crystallizing into something sharp and deadly. He begins to see Radu not just as a brother but as a symbol of everything he despises, the ease of surrender, the betrayal of their shared blood. The love they once shared is still there, buried deep, but it's now poisoned by resentment, a wound that will never fully heal. Vlad's adaptation becomes a dangerous game. He seeks out opportunities to learn, not to please his handlers but to arm himself for the future. He volunteers for tasks that give him access to the empire's inner workings, observing interrogations, studying military drills, asking questions about supply lines and fortifications. His inquiries are framed as curiosity, the kind of eagerness a reformed captive might show, but in reality, he's building a mental map of the Ottoman machine. He memorizes the names of provincial governors, their weaknesses, their rivalries. He studies the empire's bureaucracy, noting how orders flow from Constantinople to the farthest reaches of the Balkans. Every piece of information is a weapon, stored away for a day when he will wield it against those who tried to break him. The walls of Topkapi Palace seem to close in as Vlad Dracula's captivity stretches into its 6th year, a relentless forge where his soul is being hammered into something new, something terrifying. You're with Grim Chronicles, and we're walking through the final days of Vlad's imprisonment, where the boy who entered this gilded cage is almost gone, replaced by a calculating force of vengeance. At 17, Vlad is a paradox, a model captive on the surface, his defiance softened into a quiet compliance that pleases his handlers, But beneath this facade, a storm is brewing, fueled by years of memorized humiliations and mastered tactics. His brother Radu, fully transformed into an Ottoman ally, stands beside him, a living contrast to the darkness growing in Vlad's heart. Vlad's compliance is a performance, a carefully crafted mask that hides a mind that has spent years studying the art of power. He speaks Turkish fluently now, his accent polished by forced immersion. He moves through the palace with a grace that mimics Radu's, bowing at the right moments, answering questions with the right words. The officials see this as their triumph, proof that even the most stubborn prince can be tamed. They dress him in fine silks, parade him at state functions, and speak of his future as a loyal governor in Wallachia. But every bow, every murmured agreement is a calculation, a step toward the day when he will turn the Ottomans' lessons against them. The abuse hasn't stopped. Nightly summons to private chambers, physical and psychological violations that have become routine, but Vlad endures them with a detachment that borders on inhuman. He no longer flinches, his mind retreating to a place where he can analyze rather than feel. He notes the officials' preferences, their weaknesses, the way they use their authority to dominate. He memorizes the layout of the palace, the schedules of the guards, the routines of the court. He listens to whispered conversations among the janissaries, picking up fragments of military strategy, supply chain logistics, and political rivalries. He's no longer just a captive. He's a spy in the heart of the enemy's stronghold, gathering intelligence for a war he's determined to wage. The officials, so confident in their control, never suspect that the boy they've tortured is becoming their most dangerous creation. Radu, by contrast, is the palace's golden convert. 14. He has embraced the Ottoman world with open arms, speaking Turkish as if it were his native tongue, reciting Islamic prayers with a fervor that impresses even the most devout pashas, navigating the court's politics with a skill that marks him for greatness. The officials groom him for a future in administration, seeing his intelligence and charm as assets for the empire's expansion. Radu's success is a constant wound to Vlad, a reminder of the path he refuses to take. The brothers share fleeting moments of connection, whispered memories of Wallachia's forests, but these are overshadowed by Radu's loyalty to the Ottomans, a loyalty that Vlad sees as a betrayal of their shared blood. The officials orchestrate moments to highlight this divide, seating Radu at high tables during banquets while Vlad pours wine, or having Radu lead prayers while Vlad stands in the shadows. These moments are designed to crush Vlad's spirit, to show him that resistance is pointless, that submission is the only path to power. But instead of breaking, Vlad grows colder, his hatred sharpening into a weapon. He begins to see Radu not just as a brother but as a symbol of everything he despises: the ease of surrender, the betrayal of their heritage. The love they once shared is now tangled with resentment, a wound that festers with every orchestrated humiliation. Vlad's adaptation becomes a dangerous act of reconnaissance. He volunteers for tasks that give him access to the empire's inner workings, observing interrogations, studying military drills, asking questions about supply lines and fortifications. He memorizes the names of provincial governors, their weaknesses, their rivalries. He studies the empire's bureaucracy, noting how orders flow from Constantinople to the farthest reaches of the Balkans. Every piece of information is a weapon, stored away for a day when he will be free to act. As the spring of 1448 approaches, the political winds shift. Wallachia is in turmoil, its throne contested by rival factions, and the Ottomans see an opportunity to install their reformed princes as puppet rulers. The decision to release Vlad and Radu is made with confidence. The officials believe they've created two loyal servants, one a perfect administrator in Radu, the other a tractable ruler in Vlad. They prepare the brothers for their return with ceremonies that celebrate their education. Servants pack their belongings, administrators draft terms for Wallachia's submission, and the court buzzes with talk of the empire's success in shaping the next generation of Balkan rulers. Vlad plays his part perfectly, his face a mask of gratitude as he thanks his captors for their hospitality. But behind his eyes, a fire burns. a fire fueled by 6 years of pain, humiliation, and the burning desire to make his tormentors pay. The journey back to Wallachia is a strange mirror of the one that brought them to Constantinople. Vlad, now 17, sits in the carriage, his gaze fixed on the horizon, his mind racing with plans. Radu, at his side, speaks excitedly of their future, of how they can serve the empire while ruling their homeland. Vlad listens in silence, his thoughts far darker. He is no longer the boy who left Wallachia 6 years ago, full of hope and innocence. He is something new, a synthesis of Christian fury and Ottoman methodology, a weapon forged in the crucible of captivity. The Ottomans intended to create a servant. Instead, they've created a predator, one who understands the mechanics of fear and suffering with a precision that will soon terrify the world. The carriage rolls into Wallachia, its wheels crunching over familiar soil, but the boy who left 6 years ago is gone, replaced by a 17-year-old Vlad Dracula whose soul has been forged in the fires of Ottoman cruelty. You're with Grim Chronicles, and we're stepping into the aftermath of Vlad's captivity, where the lessons he learned in Topkapi Palace are about to explode across the Balkans, reshaping history with blood and terror. The Vlad who returns is a time bomb, a weapon of vengeance cloaked in compliance, ready to unleash a reign that will make the world tremble. His first reign in Wallachia, in the autumn of 1448, is brief but brutal. At 17, he seizes the throne with Ottoman support, a puppet ruler in name only. Within weeks, he begins implementing the lessons he learned in Constantinople. He targets local boyars, Wallachian nobles, who betrayed his father, summoning them to Targovist under the pretense of a feast. What follows is a massacre, a calculated display of power that echoes the Ottoman spectacles he witnessed. The boyars are impaled, their bodies left to rot as a warning to others. This first reign lasts only 2 months before Hungarian intervention forces Vlad into exile, but it's a preview of the terror to come. The people of Wallachia, who hoped for a liberator, see instead a prince baptized in blood, his methods as ruthless as those of his former captors. When Vlad reclaims the throne in 1456, he unleashes a reign of terror that shocks even a medieval world accustomed to violence. His signature method, impalement, is no accident. He saw its power in the palace courtyard, where the Serbian prince's slow death taught him the value of prolonged suffering. Vlad refines the technique with obsessive care, varying stake heights and angles to maximize pain and duration. In 1459, he creates the infamous Forest of the Impaled outside Targovist, where 30,000 Saxon merchants and their families are skewered in a grotesque cathedral of suffering. The stakes are arranged by height, their screams a symphony of terror that traumatizes entire populations. Ottoman envoys, hardened by years of conquest, are reduced to retching at the sight, their horses refusing to advance through the stench of decay. Vlad's cruelty isn't limited to impalement. He boils prisoners in cauldrons, skins enemies to display their flesh as banners, and once nails an Ottoman commander's turban to his head when the man refuses to remove it, dining calmly as the victim bleeds to death. Vlad's psychological sophistication is as terrifying as his physical brutality. He understands that the anticipation of torture can be more effective than the act itself. He invites enemies to lavish banquets, treating them as honored guests before revealing forests of stakes through palace windows. Many surrender rather than face such a fate. His 1462 night attack on Sultan Mehmed II's camp, with just 10,000 men against 90,000, is a masterstroke of psychological warfare. Though the assassination attempt fails, the Sultan, who once oversaw Vlad's captivity, flees Wallachia in days, haunted by the realization that the boy he tried to break has become something far more dangerous. Vlad's reputation grows, carried by German pamphlets that spread tales of his atrocities across Europe. These accounts, though sometimes exaggerated, capture a truth. Vlad's cruelty is industrialized, a machine of terror that operates with a precision that feels almost inhuman. Conservative estimates suggest he ordered the deaths of 80,000 people, nearly a quarter of Wallachia's population, during his reigns, a number that staggers even his contemporaries. His brother Radu, by contrast, is the Ottoman system's success story. Fully converted, Radu serves as governor of Wallachia during Vlad's exiles, a loyal servant of the empire. In 1462, when the brothers face each other in civil war, it's a clash of opposites, one a perfect Ottoman convert, the other a monster who has turned their methods against them. Their confrontation is more than a battle for a throne. It's a symbol of the palace school's triumph and failure, a testament to the power of systematic conditioning and the danger of creating a mind that refuses to break. Vlad's final days come in 1476, in a muddy field far from the grandeur of Targovist. At 45, he dies in battle, likely assassinated by his own boyars, exhausted by decades of his relentless terror. His death is quick, almost anticlimactic for a man who perfected the art of prolonged suffering. His head is sent to Constantinople, where Sultan Mehmed II, the same ruler who nearly fell to Vlad's night raid, displays it as proof that even monsters can be killed. But death can't contain Vlad's legacy. His reputation for supernatural cruelty grows, evolving into literary legend. By the 19th century, Bram Stoker's Dracula immortalizes him as the Vampire Count, a figure of immortal evil that reflects medieval Europe's belief that such brutality could only come from demonic sources. They couldn't grasp that the true horror was human, born from the calculated conditioning of a vulnerable child. The question that haunts me is the one that plagued Vlad's contemporaries. Was he mad, or was his cruelty a calculated strategy? The truth lies in both. He wielded terror with a scientist's precision, using his reputation to control enemies far stronger than his small army. But beneath that calculation was a compulsion, a darkness born in the shadows of Topkapi Palace, where a boy learned that power was suffering and survival meant mastering it. The Ottomans wanted a servant. Instead, they created a ruler who understood power better than they ever could. His transformation is history's darkest lesson. The greatest monsters aren't born, they're made piece by piece, in the crucible of cruelty. The palace school's greatest success was also its greatest failure, proof that systematic abuse can create something that surpasses its creators in every way. The 11-year-old boy who entered captivity with prayers on his lips became a legend who haunted nightmares for centuries. His name, Dracula, is more than a title, it's a warning, a reminder that the horrors we inflict on the innocent can return in ways we can't imagine. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the grim chronicles. If this tale of blood and vengeance gripped you, hit that subscribe button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's keep unraveling history's darkest secrets together. Until next time, stay curious and beware the shadows.